So the flag looks good from the back, but it's not me.
Should I mention this? Okay, and I have a new guest. Hello, what's your name? What brings you to JCON?
Hi, I'm Bruno Souza, and I'm known as the Brazilian Java Man. And I'm here at JCON running the mentorship hub, where we're going to have Java champions, speakers, open source developers, helping developers to grow their careers.
Let's switch to the back camera. So that's the Brazilian flag.
Yes, looks pretty good from the back, right? Yeah.
So you're the flag man. What are
Yes,
these?
the man of the flag. That's how I'm known. The man of the flag.
And the mentoring sessions. What's the goal of these?
So basically, here's what happens in our careers, right? So when you get to a certain level, it's hard to move up. It's hard to know what to do, right? Because the developer career is very unique for each person, right? So it depends what you do, depends the technology that you work with, depends the things you're doing. And so when you get to a certain point, you need some help, right? And that's what we're doing. We're getting people that have been doing those things, people that have been working on projects, working on growing beyond senior, for example, achieving higher career goals, build their own companies, and we're bringing them here so developers can come in and they can talk to someone that have done that, and so then you have some real guidance from real people to do the next step in your career.
People may know the Dilbert principle. You grow in your career until you reach a level
Right.
a level of
Incompetence, right? Yes.
So that's a real danger, that you get promoted until you become a manager, and maybe you don't want to be that manager.
Mm-hmm.
How to avoid this?
Well, you know what? That's very funny because you mentioned that principle, because I heard of that principle when I was a teenager, because I got a book from my father, and I was looking at that, and I thought it was a joke, right? All my career I thought just, it was a joke book, right? And it's really. But one thing that I've done in my career, for example, is that I've been avoiding the incompetence level, right? So basically, if it is a place that I don't want to go, is not something that I don't really want to excel, because lots of people get to that level because they're promoted to something that they don't want to do, because it's not actually. I don't agree with the idea of the incompetence level. It's actually more what you want to do or not, because if it is something that you want to do, you're going to learn how to do it, right? You're going to be good at that. But the problem is that people are promoted to a place where they don't want to be, they don't want to go, and then they don't want to grow in that place. And so I think that's a good way to do is if that is a place you don't want to go, don't go there, right? You might be afraid. That's a different thing. You might be afraid. You might not know exactly what that means. And if you want to do it and you just don't think that you can do it, or you're afraid of doing it, then you can get help from someone. That's why we talk a lot about mentorships, right? Because you get help from a mentor that's going to help you succeed on that next level. But if you are if it's something that you don't want to do, and let me give an example, for example, right? So at one point, I'm a partner in a consulting company, right, in Brazil, and at one point, the guy that used to be the owner of the company, he wanted me to be like the country manager in Brazil. And I told him, I said, I don't want to do this. And he said, no, I'm going to help you. And I said, I'm not going to be good at this. I said, no, but I'll teach you. And so then I said, look, if you really want me to do this, the problem is that if I do it, I don't want to do it, and I'm going to break the company. And he said, okay, so let's not do it, right? And then he said, he tried one last time, and he said, but Bruno, if I do that, I'm going to have to hire, if you don't do this, I'm going to have to hire someone to be your boss, and it's going to make more money than you. And I said, that's great, because he's going to do something that I don't want to do it, right? And we did hire this person, and he's awesome. He's amazing. So he has done the things that I would never want to do, right? And some of those things are like the daily work, right? But some of the things are, outside of work. So for example, when you're working in a consulting company and you're working with big customers, then you have to go eat dinner with those guys, right? You have to go play golf with them, right? You have to go smoke cigars, right? Those are things I don't want to do, right? And I would not do it. And so I would be a terrible country manager if I was doing those kind. If I had to do those things, then I would not want to do it. And so and that's, I like this example because that shows that certain positions require you to do things that you don't want to do. And so if you don't want to do, don't go in those places, right? Don't. Now, there are other ways for you to grow where you are, and I think that's the important thing. So don't get stuck in doing something just because you like it, and you never want to do something else, because there are ways, right? So there's lots of different. Actually, I'm going to do a mentoring today about growing beyond senior, where we talk about the 5 paths for you to grow beyond senior level positions, right? And many of those paths are not manager.
Yeah, because in a lot of companies, you can only grow beyond a certain senior point in changing to a team leader or a manager. But if you really love the development stuff, in some companies, you end up at some blocked position and you cannot grow any longer. Is there a way to solve that within a company, or do you need to change jobs in many circumstances?
So when we talk about growing beyond senior, that's there's five levels, let's say 5 paths, not levels, 5 different paths for you to grow beyond senior, right? So should I mention really quick? Yeah. So all the 5 paths, right? So the first one is what I call the people path, right? So that's the one you mentioned a lot, right? The manager, right? You know, that you're going to manage people. So you're going to be a manager, you're going to be a director, you're going to be a VP. So that's the people path. The second one I like to call the technical path, and that's when you become a staff plus, right? So you become an individual contributor. So then you can go to staff, you can go to like a principal engineer, distinguished engineer. The technical path is where you grow technically and you have more responsibilities technically, but you don't manage people, right? And so those 2 paths are interesting because they are equivalent, right? So a staff position is equivalent to a manager, a principal position is equivalent to a director, and a distinguished position equivalent to a vice president. So they're equivalent in responsibility and even salaries, but the technical path, you don't manage anyone, right? So that's the second path. In terms of the third path is what I call the community path, right? Is to do things like you're doing, for example, right? Is that you become you become a technical person inside the non-technical area of the company. So you're the technical person inside marketing, or the technical person inside HR, or the technical person inside sales, or technical person inside which one I'm missing? HR, marketing, sales, DevRel, right? Whatever. So then you become the technical person inside a non-technical area of the company, and that's really interesting because it's very autonomous, right? You have lots of autonomy, and very visible. Like you're, for example, right? You're probably one of the most visible persons inside Azul, for example, right? Because you're doing this community work, right? And so that's the third path. The last 2 paths are very independent paths, right? One is what I call the independent path, right? So you become an independent professional, right? So a consultant or freelancer, instructor, right? So you're gonna do you sell yourself as a product, let's say, right? And the last one is what I call the entrepreneurship path. Is that you participate in building a company, and then basically you sell a product instead of a company. So all 5 paths for you to grow beyond senior. And now what I want to mention about those things is that if you think about the first 3 paths, they necessarily happen inside a company, right? Because you have to have a position like this. And now when you think about it, is that companies only have the managed path, and that is not true. The thing is, those positions are, all of them, including managers, they're very autonomous. They're very unique positions. And so you have to find your space inside your company to do that. And that's what I think is hard many times, because there's no one telling you what to do. There's no one showing you how to go that path. And so when you now answering your question, right? What do I do if my company doesn't have that path? Build it, right? Because that's the point. Those are very autonomous positions. So if you don't go and build that path, then no one's going to build that path for you.
So it's really up to you yourself to decide, this is what I love to do, and this is what I want to do in the next years, and then push it some way into either your company, your own company, or in the company you work for.
Right. You can find your company, or you can look for another company if you need to, right? That does happen in certain companies that things are very, very rigid, for example, then there's no way to do it, right? But I find this very rare. I've mentored lots of people to actually go find those things. And the reality is that in the vast majority of companies, they want you to stay, right? Actually, one thing that I say is that, your first responsibility in your company is to want to stay. Have you ever thought about that? We think that our first responsibility is to do the code, is to solve the problems, but no. The first, as a professional, you should work in a way that you want to stay in your company, because if you leave, that's very complicated for your company. I'm not saying that you should never leave. That's a different thing, right? But you should want to stay. So you should negotiate your salary. You should negotiate what you do. You should negotiate who you work with. You should negotiate your position, because you should want to stay in the company. Because if we don't want to stay, we should not be working for that company to begin with, right? And so that's the point. So when you look at your company, think about, what do I need to do to want to stay, and go negotiate. Developers a lot of times are afraid of negotiation, because they think that negotiation is like, oh, I have to. It's salary. It's only salary. It's not only salary. It's everything is a negotiation, right? But then people think that a negotiation is me taking something out of you. And that's not. A negotiation is that we have a common problem, and we have to organize, even in small things. So for example, me and you, right? Before I stopped by here, said, let's do a interview. And I said, I can't do right now because I have something to do. And so we negotiated, right? When can you do it? A little bit, not now, maybe tomorrow. So we negotiate. Why? Because we have a common problem. You want to do the podcast. I want to be interviewed, right? So we have a common problem. So we have to negotiate and find something that we can do it together. And so in a negotiation, right, in your company, is the same thing. Your boss wants you to stay, because if you leave, it's a big problem. You want to stay because you like the company, because they pay well. But maybe there's another company paying you more, that offer you more. So you have to negotiate, right? Or maybe you're doing something in your company that's not the best thing for you. So you have to negotiate. So you want to stay. And so that's our first thing we got to do. And so negotiate. And that's one thing I tell everyone, because I've coached many developers to actually achieve those positions inside their companies, because they want to stay and the company doesn't have a way for them to stay. And so they negotiate. I have actually a very interesting case. Is even in my book. I have a tiny little book called The Best Developer Job Ever. And that's the story of a mentee of mine, that he really liked his company where he was, but he did not see a way to grow inside his company, right? And so he started looking for alternatives. And then, but I told him, I said, no, you should negotiate, right? So he talked to his boss. And he said, look, I'm looking for some things, and there's some offers, but I would like to stay. And they told him, said, if you want to stay, we want you to stay. So they built a new department, an innovation department, and he was the head of the innovation department, just so he could do what he wanted to do, because he was so valuable for the company. And so your company might have something like this, but you have to negotiate. You have to talk to people.
If you know what you want, and you really have to ask for it. And that's what you're teaching in these mentorships. So I will do a mentorship about writing about your work, like for instance for Foojay, or writing a book. So thanks for inviting me. People who still want to subscribe, they can do that?
Yes, everyone that's here in JCON, that they can totally do it. Basically there's a page on the JCON website, right? On the schedule JCON, you can click there, mentorship hub, and then you can schedule your mentorship. But even if you don't, right, just show up. We are how do you say, like a mother's heart, right? That we always can fit someone else. So we're gonna make it possible for everyone to be there to participate. So so you have a mentorship about writing, and so maybe I should interview you back, right? Because I think that writing. Let's tell you one thing here. Writing is one of the most important skills you can build for your career, because lots of people think that, I need to learn how to think. And you think that you think when you think, but in reality, you only think when you externalize. So you only think when you write, when you speak, right? When you present. So writing is the best way for you to think.
Indeed, you have to understand the topic before you can create a condensed example for a blog or whatever.
Exactly, right? So what is your big tip for people to learn how to write?
Just starting writing. Just do it. I ended up with a book because I started writing for a blog post. So just start it and try it and see where you end up. So that's the main goal. Thank you for your time. Thank you for organizing the mentorship and for this interview.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. So if you need any help in terms of growing your career, I wrote with Heather Vancouver a book called the Developer Career Master Plan. And so if you go right now to careermasterplan.dev, you can get the first chapter for free for the book. It teaches you how learning and how to acquire skills in the first chapter. It's a pretty good idea. And then when you do that, you're going to get my email and my contact. So if you need any help, just message me and I'll help you out.
Okay, thank you. And the link to that website will be in the show notes of the podcast.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, cool. Thank you.